All right, so we are currently recording our 314th episode.
Wow.
Of the Empire Never Ended podcast.
Just cranking them out.
Whoa. You're strong now.
Unbelievable power.
You found your power, yeah.
The strength and the...
All right. Looking forward to this. I spent a lot of the day watching the stand-up comedy routines of the boys from Trigonometry. Are you aware of this show? This one of them is like this British Eurasianist guy.
Oh, Jesus.
The other has this dumpy, sad little like gopher face, and they're both. I just realized that they're both comedians today.
Oh,
that's how they describe themselves. So I thought, like, what does it look like? And I watched him do the same set 6 years apart.
Wow,
and it was terrible both times. I don't know what it means to them. Shit, I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
No comment.
No ex-comedians here.
No.
I guess we'll just welcome the people.
Welcome them.
I will welcome you. I welcome you, people, to The Empire Never Ended with Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, back in the old history mobile.
Yeah.
The magic school bus.
Miss Frizzle's taking us back to white Aryan Resistance.
Yeah, Miss Fritzl's giving us the old race and reason lectures today.
Yeah, like we are going through these freaks one by one, and there's so many of them. I think, we won't do. I mean, we'll have to have future arcs with the same team if we want to cover all of them, or like at least the most important ones, because we won't do it in this arc for sure.
Yeah, there's a few early 30s Christian militias we blew by.
We got to go back to the 30s.
Circle back around too.
Yeah, or like David Duke, for example.
Oh yeah. Fuck the whole clan. I mean, shit.
Yeah.
We get our clan in small doses out here.
Yeah, the clan is like something that we discussed often, but I guess it's such a big thing in the US. It needs probably an arc or something.
Yeah.
We've
been saying this for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll continue to say it for years.
Yeah.
It'll never end. The Invisible Empire never started on Denapod. All right. Well, war.
Yes, White Aryan Resistance.
Yes.
And its founder, Tom Metzger.
Yes.
So we've done some Metzger before.
We did one episode on his TV show, Race and Reason, from the 80s. It's like
little did I know back then that that's some of their best media.
Now that I think back on it,
it was a competently produced show, which has had no equal since.
Yeah. Well, radio and television is like one of Tom's passions even before he was a Nazi.
Sure.
He was very much into that, the technical side of all of that. So he's I think a lot of people know about him. He had a long media career almost up until when he died, which was in 2020.
Yeah.
There's like a well-known Louis Theroux episode dedicated mostly to him. It's like Louis Theroux and the Nazis, but he talks with a skinhead gang, I think, in the same episode. But it's mostly focused on Tom Metzger, I think.
No, he was the most articulate of the bunch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was one of the leaders of the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, kind of surprisingly, quote unquote, normal for a Nazi. Like, he had a kind of a middle class life.
Yeah.
Let's say. In many ways, owning your business, having a stable family for many decades,
knowing a trade,
and so on.
So basically not James Mason.
Right.
He's not James Mason, no.
Yes.
But he was friends with James Mason, you know.
Sure, yeah.
Interviewed him on Race and Reason, and also kind of supported Siege.
Right.
So, you know, he has to be very, I mean, he's for sure crazy, but has a kind of a normal life.
Right. Which is unusual for these guys.
Yes, very much so. And I think that was also kind of disturbing about that Louis Theroux episode with him, is that like he has this kind of, you know, he's repairing like TVs of all kinds of people. Some of them are like people of color. He's communicating with them in a kind of a nice, even friendly way. He has his kids, lives in a house in a suburb of San Diego, and just looks like a normal guy, but he's like a leader of the Nazis and like of the skinhead movement, specifically in the 90s. And you know, he's endorsing Siege and so on.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of disturbing in a different way. Well, so for this episode, I'm using a paper, although we have a few books on war, but they're maybe we'll use them in some future episode because they're mostly focused on like the legal trouble. Specifically, one case that I'll mention that Tom Metzger had, like in the court, he was sued by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it was a very important court case.
Yeah.
But I'm using a paper from 2016 by George Michael.
Nice. I guess it would be nice anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, we've used George Michael's work before.
Probably, yeah.
On Liberty Lobby.
Okay.
On Liberty Lobby. Yeah.
Okay. So the paper is called "This Is War: Tom Metzger, White Aryan Resistance, and the Lone Wolf Legacy" from 2016. And it's kind of the only one that I found that specifically covers Tom Metzger and White Aryan Resistance, and it gives like a good chronological overview.
And that's kind of interesting though, because he is such an important person in this movement. And very public, right?
Sure.
I mean, he was doing interviews. He had a TV show on public access, but it was a TV show nonetheless. I mean, he was well known in Nazi circles, and yet there seems to be not that much biographical stuff written about him or the movement.
There was even a spin-off of his show in Florida, local spin-off there that was only like tangentially related somehow to the original.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Tom Metzger had German ancestry. Apparently his ancestors moved in the early 19th century to the US. Or no, actually 18th century, early 18th century. Yeah. So his mother was called Willowdene. Is that a name?
That's a lovely name.
Yeah.
Willowdene.
Willowdene Mary Richter. She was a waitress, and then while working in this restaurant, I guess, she met a guy called Thomas Linton and got pregnant and married him in Chicago. The marriage did not last long. Before our guy was born, the dad was already
out of the picture.
So when Willowdene gave birth to Tom, she was still 18 years old. And Tom Metzger was born actually as Thomas Byron Linton. He had his biological dad's last name, and he was born on April 8th, 1938, in Warsaw, Indiana. Willowdene soon met another guy and married him, who was called Clois Earl Metzger. So that became his new dad.
So, Clois and Willowdene.
Yes.
Some old-timey names.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clois.
Yes.
Clois.
Clois Earl. So he was their only child, Tom was. They were strict Lutheran parents. And when he enrolled in school, he enrolled as Thomas Linton Metzger.
Okay.
When he was still a little kid, they moved to Florida, somewhere near Tampa, but then returned to Indiana.
Wait a minute. I once lived in Florida, somewhere near Tampa.
Oh.
And now I have something like a radio show.
Yes. Well, when Tom was 13, he set up a transmitter, strung up an antenna, and created his own radio station. So he said that radio became his life. That was like his first passion, much before he became interested in politics or Nazi or something like that. And it kind of remained this kind of like, communications technology, and the technical side of all of that became something that was in some form or another central to his life.
Yeah.
He said that, like, in his opinion, he had a normal and happy childhood. He liked cars, rock and roll, and dating girls. He had a passion for adventure, so he graduated from high school in 1956, and immediately went to a Greyhound bus bound for Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and he joined the army.
Oh, okay.
So he said that he joined the army because he wanted to learn a vocation and see the world, and he did. He was trained as a microwave technician and was stationed in an army base in Germany.
So he made their hot pockets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Metzger, it's cold in the middle again.
So he lived in Germany for some years in this military base, and his job was to relay military communications from Europe to US. He later on said that this was his first experience with people of color, and that he did not like them. He found out that he does not like them.
Oh, okay.
But he didn't. He said that he was not a real racist back then. He just discovered.
He was just prejudiced.
Yes, he discovered that he doesn't like people of color. And he said something like,
"But it's me, not you." That's why he wasn't a racist.
Yeah.
Well, he hadn't, learned race science yet.
He hadn't learned race is the religion.
Yeah.
He said all of these things, later, like decades later on. So it's how authentic is it? Who knows? Because, he went as a Nazi, he commented back on how he became a racist. But he also pointed out there was no single event that led him to racism. And also pointed out that he doesn't remember any kind of racist statements by his parents when he was growing up or something like that. So,
they noticed a lot of things, but they weren't racist.
Yeah. Who knows what what that means to someone like Tom Metzger. But commenting on this first realization that he doesn't like people of color he said something like they didn't conform to his idea of what society is all about. Something like that.
Okay.
So after 3 years of enlistment in the army, he returned home to Indiana in 1959. So we are still in the 50s.
Yeah.
And there he found a job at a TV repair shop, which was his most jobs that he had was he was a TV repairman.
Sure.
Okay.
Even like in the 2000s. He had some other jobs in the meantime. But he worked in Indiana. He worked in a shop called Rocket TV. But soon Indiana was boring to him, so he, along with some other friends, moved to LA and got a new job installing stereos into cars.
Famously, a great place to go if you don't like people of color.
Yeah.
Yes. So he got his job installing stereos into cars at Chips Auto Radio, which was just across the street from MGM Studios.
Okay. He's going to be discovered. He's going to be in the pictures.
Well, almost, yeah. So in California, he met Kathleen Murphy and married her. She was from a Catholic family. And when marrying her, Metzger converted to Catholicism, which he preferred, and has said that it kind of gave some kind of sense of conservatism to his life and stability.
He likes the order.
Yeah.
And then we'll like the order.
Yeah. Yes. So he he married Kathleen, I think in 59, 60, something like that. And they were married for many decades until Kathleen died in 92 because of cancer. And they had a stable marriage, had 4 kids, 3 daughters and a son. They together settled in Fallbrook, which was a suburb of San Diego. I think this is also where Louis Theroux interviewed him, in the 2000s. So his next job was kind of interesting. He got a job at Douglas Aircraft, And he claimed that this job put him in contact with some of the company's top engineers. So he was very proud of the 5 years he spent there, and claimed that he was a part of a team that put the first man on the moon. He worked, some part of the job there was his.
I mean, that's a team of like
20,000
people.
Yes.
He turned a screw that ended up on some.
He set up Kubrick's cameras just right.
Yes. So he was very proud of that his whole life. But this is also interesting because in this context of working for Douglas Aircraft is when he got his first connection with something political. And this was because the company organized a kind of an anti-communist club for their workers.
Oh, sick.
Which was called like Sell America Committee.
Wait, SELL or CELL?
SELL.
So Sell America.
Yes.
The Committee to Sell America. The Anti-Communist Committee to Sell America. Yes. That's perfect. That's what Toad should have been called. That's perfect.
Yeah.
The Asset Stripping Committee.
Hell yes.
So what they did, what the club did, which called itself a committee, was they organized like screenings of anti-communist films. Probably some that we,
probably some that we.
Okay.
Oh shit! I just wanted this one.
Okay.
Whoops.
So this is, how Tom Metzger is getting politicized, like by watching, John
I was a communist for the FBI.
Exactly.
And like in the context of working for an American corporation.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, we talked about this when we watched these movies. This was the thing that they were trying to do, right? Make these anti-communist clubs on the workplace to kind of counteract any potential subversive labor activity.
Right.
Infiltration. Communist infiltration.
And they would also bring like conservative speakers as guests to, give speeches and so on to the workers. So who knows who went there.
Okay, so it was an effective tool of making your normal middle class white guy from Indiana into a Nazi.
Yes, exactly. So as a result of this experience, in 1964, Tom Metzger became involved in the Barry Goldwater presidential campaign.
Of course, yeah.
He quit this job because it was unionized.
Oh, wow. So that's fun trivia.
He was very much against unions, and as a matter of principle, when they became unionized, he just left.
Okay, all right. It's a man of principle. Yeah,
yeah. So
I refuse to not be exploited, sir.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
He's there to sell America. Come on.
So again, he became a TV repairman, but this time he opened his shop. So he's a kind of a real American, no? Yeah. I mean, he has this kind of Christian family with 4 kids, a stable marriage, and his own shop.
Yeah, didn't want to deal with commie unionism at the workplace, so he set off on his own and became a small business owner, proud small business owner.
He served in the military, he's not like...
his only black spot is he converted to Catholicism, really.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of...
He'll spend the rest of his life making up for that.
Well, he will continue to have unorthodox opinions when it comes to religion.
Was that a pun?
Oh, really?
Well, no, but yes, you can see it as that if you want.
I mean, somebody that likes Rahowa as a principle in the World Church of the Creator maybe has an unorthodox opinion on religion.
Yes, but he had like a few of the unorthodox opinion. We'll see. Okay, it was certainly an evolution.
It turns out race is the religion, but for everyone except white people.
Yeah. So at the time, he was alarmed by things like the Watts riots and so on. And he saw them as bad signs of things to come. But he later on said that he didn't strictly see all of that in like racial terms at the time. He wasn't still a Nazi. For sure, he was racist, as a normal conservative anti-communist is. But he wasn't like 100% focused on the race issue.
Right.
What?
It's just our bar is hilarious for not a Nazi. It's really I mean, he was a race. He did kind of believe in concentration camps. Okay, but
So
wanted the door to be lockable from the inside.
So while working, for the Goldwater campaign, he became acquainted with the John Birch Society.
All right,
and became a member. and only a member, but like a local leader. So the John Birch Society would organize meetings in his house.
I mean,
Again, checking very familiar boxes here.
Sure. He's a good
Goldwater
speaker.
campaign, Bircher.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he became a Bircher in 1964.
Oh, good time.
And he was a member until 1972. So he spent like 8 years as a Bircher. And like as a leader almost immediately.
That's a good time to join because that's also when they were getting dropped by a lot of their more respectable colleagues for going hard on JFK stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. He picked the underdog a bit there, I think.
He also, at that time, started his own personal study of the communist question. And this is the first time that he got acquainted with, anti-Semitism and the connections that the communists had with like the world banking system and so on. And heard of the Rothschilds and so on. So even though, the Birchers were kind of trying to get away from anti-Semitism, unlike some of the other groups, open anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
In this context of anti-communism is how he got acquainted with anti-Semitism, really. All the conspiracy theories about the Rothschilds, the bankers, the connections between the bankers and the Marxists, and so on.
Okay.
So in 1966, as a Bircher, he worked for Ronald Reagan's gubernatorial campaign in California.
All right.
Although he said that he never met him personally. But soon he found Reagan to be too liberal on social issues, especially when Reagan said, for example, that he would be ready to use the military to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling on school busing, for example. So that was really too much for Metzger. So in 1968, he supported George Wallace for president.
Oh, right.
Of course, yeah.
So by 1960...
I wonder if he and Asa Carter crossed paths because they have kind of a...
Different parts of the country, though, no?
Yeah.
Because Metzger probably wasn't important enough to meet Carter.
But I'm wondering when Asa's, when was Asa's, more Hollywood time, though?
Well, after...
That was after the 60s. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right.
I don't think that he had any contacts with them, but he... by 1972, he was kind of disappointed in the John Birch Society and the conservative movement. He thought they were too soft and not ready to do what it needs to be done to confront the terrible issues facing America and so on. So at that time, in those circles, he heard about the National States Rights Party, for example. But he said that he heard about it. It doesn't seem like he had much connection with them, but maybe he did. But what he was also kind of into at that time, while becoming more radical than the Bircher, was the tax protesters movement. So he became an anti-tax, activist, and for a while stopped paying his taxes. And he also, what moved him away from the Birchers is that he became against the Vietnam War, which he saw as a kind of a conspiracy to bankrupt the U.S. I'm kind of surprised that he wasn't connected to Liberty Lobby.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Because that's the group that's not mentioned here at all. But that's, seems like a group for him.
And they were super DC based, though, weren't they?
Well, no. I mean, he started in California. In the Bay Area. And I'm sure he had contacts out there. And if there was a Liberty Lobby connection, George Mike would be the one that would have made it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But he didn't. Liberty Lobby is not mentioned. And it's kind of curious because it seems like a group for him, Getting away from the Birchers because, among other things, you are against the war in Vietnam seems like Liberty Lobby.
Yeah.
It probably didn't happen. So he became a tax rebel and didn't pay his taxes from 1972 until 1976. But in the end, IRS made him pay all of the taxes, the back taxes that he didn't pay.
Happens.
So he joined the National Association to Keep and Bear Arms. and supported the American Independent Party in California.
I was just going to ask you if the next thing was, so he started buying up a bunch of guns.
Yeah,
of
course.
Well, I mean, there's that fork in the road for a lot of American right wingers when they, they can either decide to go into the kind of anti-tax movement, and then that inevitably also goes into militia.
Yeah.
So, one of the reasons that he got disappointed in the conservative movement was that he thought that they were not really taking care of the working class whites.
Mm-hmm. The white yeomanry.
Yes. So it's a kind of a bit of I guess for American Nazis, kind of a typical but strange position of also having this kind of libertarian anti-taxes policies, but also trying to have a kind of a more socialist Nazi politics that supports the working class.
Mm-hmm. It's not dissimilar to how like Bannon likes to self-present.
Yeah, I guess
today.
So because of these reasons, he slowly drifted towards organized racism. So, for example, a guy that I think you, Fritz, did an episode on, William Potter Gale.
Oh yeah. That's one of the foundational figures of Christian identity and the U.S. militia movement.
Yeah, exactly. He founded the
California Rangers.
I guess the Posse Comitatus, or like one of the people who founded that. Potter Gale claimed that he converted Metzger into political racism.
Okay.
Gale, as you said, was also a Christian identity guy. So for a time, Metzger was involved with Christian identity.
Yeah.
So around 71, Metzger came into contact, became friends with Reverend Bertrand Comparet. And at that time, he converted to Christian identity. Later on, he even became an ordained minister in James Warner's New Christian Crusade Church. That was in 1974. So, he's a Christian identity priest in the 70s.
Damn.
So, around that time, he was also affiliated with Robert DePue's Minutemen.
Okay.
Well.
Okay.
He's fucking getting around. Like, this is the core of the militia movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knows them all.
So the mid-70s is when David Duke was trying to revive the Klan and sort of to modernize it. So the two of them became associates very early on, like when they met, started working together, like in the mid-70s. At the time, David Duke was trying to kind of remodel, kind of ridiculously, the Klan as almost kind of a civil rights group for white people.
That's awesome and hilarious and worked.
Yes. So in 75, Metzger met Duke and joined the California chapter of his Klan organization. And Duke even brought Metzger to Louisiana to manage his 1975 candidacy for a state Senate seat in Baton Rouge. Their bond deepened in 76 when there was like this incident that happened in November of 76 in a military base when a group of black Marines entered a room in the barracks to interrupt what they thought or claimed was a Klan meeting in the barracks, which probably it was. And there was a fight, and the black Marines stabbed 6 white Marines, one of which died. So there was like a big thing going on. It was in all of the news. And so Duke and Metzger went there, and they like organized protest in front of the base.
Okay.
Demanded for the commander of the base to see them and talk with them, which he refused. So they continued with the protest, and at some point there was a counter protest by anti-fascists and other groups. And at some point, David Duke was attacked by one of the counter protesters, and Tom Metzger like jumped on the counter protester, and there was like a fight, and it was big news. It was all of the like big networks and headlines in newspapers that day.
Klan gets his ass kicked twice.
Yeah. But David Duke was really impressed by how Tom Metzger had his back.
Yeah.
So he made him the Grand Dragon and the leader of his clan group for California.
Okay.
I mean, it does seem this is often the case with these groups that competent people are hard to find. So I guess, whether it's the Christian identity militia thing, and then now the Klan, he kind of climbs up the ranks pretty quickly because he's not a complete and total disaster and fuck up.
He's a unicorn.
So this what was David Duke's California organization, which Tom Metzger is the leader of now, I think will be later the basis for white Aryan resistance. It comes out of that.
Okay.
So they worked very closely in those years in the 70s. One of the things they worked on was, now it would sound very familiar. It was a kind of a Klan border watch. This was in 77.
Okay. Yeah. Now we just call that being a good citizen, right?
Well, I think it was not very different back then. So from what I read here. So they supposedly organized this patrol that they said they had like 500 to 1,000 Klansmen in it, stretching from Texas to California. They probably exaggerated.
I mean, wait, stretching from Texas to California, 1,000 Klansmen would leave a lot of uncovered territory.
Of course,
I kind of do believe the number.
But even like local, like border, like an immigration officials and cops said they welcomed any help they can get, even if it's from the Klan.
Of course.
I mean, I don't doubt that at all.
Those border cops are probably like,
I mean, shit, it's just a uniform change to me. Takes me 5 minutes in the bathroom.
So at that time, they would they were in almost daily contact. David Duke and Metzger were working on these projects that they had. But also soon, Metzger started having like misgivings about Duke's character. So, for example, at one Klan rally, cops showed up to respond to like a gunfire nearby, and Duke got scared and told all of the Klan people to throw their like Klan IDs into the bonfire they had. And Tom Metzger was kind of, what the fuck? Like, this guy's, a coward, whatever. Also, Duke had like affairs with the wives of Klan members.
I mean, that's just a Klan tradition. That goes back to the second Klan at least. Yeah.
So this created problems. But the last straw happened in August 1979.
Okay.
What happened was they had a rally of their Klan group. There were hundreds of people supposedly there. So David Duke went to the stage to give a speech, but he was wearing only a bathing suit.
Nice.
And he went there to give a speech about the importance of like physical fitness.
Oh, no.
And when he finished the speech, he started lifting weights on stage.
Oh, no.
And Tom Metzger was like, okay, this is enough.
Yes.
So he separated from David Duke because of that. That was the final straw.
I'm sorry. I want to see this so bad right now. I want to. God, there must be some recording from doing this. He probably didn't do it just once,
Oh, no. And you know that he had been working up for that exact moment. And he was going to walk out in a Speedo in front of a Klan rally.
Kind of fucking Luke Skywalker hair.
Yeah. So Tom Metzger really separated the California branch of David Duke's KKK from David Duke.
Yeah.
And renamed it the California Knights of the KKK.
Right.
And became the leader of that. Now, independent organization from David Duke.
Did California start with a K?
No, I don't think so.
So it was CKKKK.
Well, it was
California Knights of the KKK.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots.
So Tom Metzger also ran for political office on numerous occasions. First time this happened was in 1978. It was for San Diego County Supervisor, and he received very few votes. In 1980, Tom Metzger actually managed to win a Democratic primary for Congress.
Wow. Okay.
And he got like 32,344 votes, or 34% of the votes in the Democratic primary. So he was like a Democratic candidate for Congress.
Do you know if he ran on like his principles? Or?
I mean, he was a known Klansman, like a leader of a Klan.
All right.
And this is kind of past the era where that was like normal in the Democrat
Although
party,
I think
right?
California had a few more, though.
Sure.
In particular.
But it still would have, I mean, this is the late 70s?
Yeah.
1980.
1980.
No,
Okay,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was a bipartisan campaign against him. Even Jimmy Carter said, "Do not vote for Tom Metzger." But he still managed to increase the number of votes in the elections, like from the primary. So in the end, he got exactly 46,383 votes.
Okay.
And the Republican guy who won, by being supported by Jimmy Carter, among other people, he got like 292,000 votes. But still, it's a lot of votes for.
If it was, if this was Europe, he would have gotten a seat.
Yeah. And at the time, he's ahead of a Klan group that will become White Aryan Resistance.
Yeah, wild.
Mm. So in 1980, he dissolved the Klan group, or really what he did is renamed it, I think, at least. So this is the first. So in the beginning, it was not called White Aryan Resistance. First name it got after he renamed it from the California or Knights of the KKK.
The CKKK
was White American Political Association.
That's not bad.
So
the WAPA,
WAPA, yeah. So he tried running for Senate in 1982. He got 73,000 votes, almost 74,000 votes, but which was not enough for nomination.
I mean, still, that's a
lot of votes.
Decent run for a Nazi. Yeah.
So in April of 1983, he called the last meeting of WAPA and renamed it White American Resistance. So it's still not White Aryan Resistance, but
now it's war.
It's war. Yes.
Okay.
And he kind of adopted a more anti-system stance. And he claimed that in 84 they had 5,000 to 10,000 members, which I don't think that's real, but that's what he claimed.
Then in 1985, he changed it to wet ass resistance.
Well, sooner than that.
Okay.
But so more and more he saw his main political allegiance is towards, the race and not towards any kind of nation.
Okay.
So he's becoming like a Nazi. And this was, reflected in September 9th, 1984, where he finally changed the name to White Aryan Resistance of the group and, kept it until he died. I don't know if the group still exists, but yeah. So Tom Metzger at that time believed, that the U.S. government no longer represented the interests of the white people. And throughout the years, although he had a very kind of simplistic ideology, there were certain main ideological points codified for war. So one point was that they had an anti-war stance.
That's very confusing. They should think about the name then.
War is anti-war.
Wait, but I'm anti-war.
Yeah.
Shit.
They thought that the wars around the world waged by the U.S. are against the interests of the white people, and he used the Smedley Butler term, war is a racket.
Okay.
So he had libertarian views of the government, preferred a small government and saw state as an instrument of oppression. So in that way, he, came out of this libertarian ideology still.
Just a reminder to listeners, Smedley Butler being the retired general who was approached by the American Legion to lead a fascist coup.
Yeah.
And then he turned him down.
It is a so-called business plot. Yeah.
Yes. Please put in the next Laserdisc.
So it did actually occur to me when you mentioned the Liberty Lobby connection that there was, Metzger hated Cardo later on, and they were feuding.
Well, yeah, Carter was not popular. Yeah.
No, Cardo wasn't pretty much anyone. But yeah, Metzger actually had a kind of funny critique of him in a true one, but he did mention that they had a connection in the early 70s. So he said, and this is quoting Metzger, Willis Cardo is a case history and multifaceted personality. I first met him in the early 70s. I worked with him on a few projects when I was just another right-winger. He has for years been able to play the man of many faces. While much of his following was Christian and only lightly racist, he played the Nazi side too, but was able to juggle the balls and keep them all in the air. On the one hand, he romanced little old Christian conservatives, and on the other hand, attended Hitler birthday parties. And that's a pretty good description of Cardo, I gotta say.
Especially from the perspective of Tom Metzger, I guess.
Yeah.
So he did roll with him for a little while.
So he did roll with him in the early 70s.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then, they went in different paths.
Yeah. And for any listeners who aren't sure, that is the Liberty Lobby connection we were looking for a little while ago.
Yeah.
It all makes sense, people.
Okay. So back to these few ideological points there were kind of important for Tom and War. He wanted to cut taxes, and he said that, any program or method that circumvents taxes is a white revolutionary act. He believed that, and War believed that nation and state should be racially based. So he was one of the pioneers of the whole, what's it called? The Northwest
territorial imperative.
Yes. He believed in ethno-states, as today people would say, and wanted to basically get rid of the US and change the borders and make a special state for white people.
Yeah.
He wanted Nazis to get into environmental politics and thought that, all of this green stuff, it's not only for the leftists.
It's very prescient of him.
They also, they had this stance that how there are roles both for women and men in the movement, which are different, and society and so on.
Yeah.
But they also were into this kind of women racial warrior stuff.
Okay.
So they promoted a lot of those kind of images. And he's
kind of Storm Maiden type thing, I guess so. Norse flavored.
Probably. And his daughter, Lynn, was the head of the Aryan Women's League.
Sorry, Sword Maiden. Excuse me.
Shield Maiden, no?
Sorry, Shield Maiden. Sword, shield, storm. Just some white ladies with fucking swords.
Yeah.
Sorry, his daughter. Say that again about his daughter.
His daughter Lynn was the head of the Aryan Women's League, which was a part of War, I think.
Aryan Women's League. Okay.
Yeah.
So his kids were involved in the movement as well.
Yes, son for sure. Yes, and at least one daughter.
And what years are we talking here?
I think we're still. These are the 80s now.
Okay.
But I'm just now going through some important ideological points.
Sure.
He was very critical of religion, especially Abrahamic traditions.
God is dead, Satan lives. We all know that.
Exactly. And he thought that, that Jesus probably didn't even exist. So he actually read a lot of, or some Bertrand Russell and Thomas Paine, and became kind of an atheist critique of from a rationalist standpoint.
Also something that became a very important part of the U.S. sort of anti-Islam right-wing sphere.
Yeah. Of course, he was obsessed with immigration and with the millions of undocumented migrants coming from specifically Latin America.
He decided to live in San Diego.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
He thought that the gay question was not so important. And that it's has no big doesn't pose a big danger for society. People should do whatever they want to do. We don't like them, but who cares? It's not so important. But the propaganda they made was extremely crudely homophobic. Although he claimed that it's really not something that he cares much about.
So, that implies he's working the audience in his mind.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, he personally doesn't care about it so much, but he knows that everybody else does.
Yeah. And he thought that, it's at least claimed that it's not so important. So abortion for white women is genocide, but it's okay for people of color. And
still genocide, probably, but it's a good one.
But it's good, yeah.
Yeah.
So he tried to integrate some kind of a class analysis into his politics, into his racism, really. So there was a lot of war, made a lot of, there was a lot of talk about against monopoly capitalism, as you might expect. So he, defined war as a working class movement. He also claimed that one of his idols was Eugene Debs, as well as Jack London.
Okay, yeah, I can understand.
Wait, didn't we that time that we talked about that ex-wobbly?
Yes,
I was
exactly.
just thinking about
that was on Race and Reason.
I was
right?
about to say. So that ex-wobbly crazy guy was a member of WAR. So by 1983, he managed to recruit some ex-leftists. One of that was that like ex-anarchist wobbly guy. I forget his name.
Yeah, I was just looking it up now, actually. Yeah.
Who was a guest at Race and Reason. He actually had like a role in WAR. Another guy was an ex-Trotskyist called Wyatt Kaltenberg, a crazy guy that also appeared on Race and Reason.
Well, I came from the left. I used to be in the tribe.
Wait a minute. We got somebody that came from the left in here? Heavens to Murgatroyd. I'm going to get letters.
I know it.
Okay.
Well, I used to be a Trotskyite when I was 12 years old. I joined the...
A Trotskyite in my show?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. It's a good thing Wally George is not here.
I know it. I joined the Young Socialist Alliance. I had to join under a false name because you got to be 14 to get in. But then, I got into that because basically, I came from a white working class environment, and I realized that the corporations were ripping off my people, and they didn't care, because two good friends of my oldest brother, which I really cared for, they got killed in Vietnam, and the right wing didn't give a damn. They supported the war. Even a lot of the Nazis, they'd be out there throwing stuff at the anti-war demonstrators. So I realized that the American right wasn't helping the white working class at all.
John Jewell. That was the Wobbly's name.
Yeah, he had also a different name.
White working class guys must. What was it?
We're on our last leg now. If white working men don't start standing up now, they might as well slit their throats.
Yeah. So he had an ex-anarchist and an ex-Troth.
All right,
which was this Wyatt Kaltenberg.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of talks about multinational corporations being the big enemy. So he was kind of prepared for what was coming, like for the anti-globalist movement in some way.
Yeah. Do you know there was also a time when Race and Reason had a black participant that they had on a couple times?
Yes, I remember this.
That dude was nuts too.
He had connections with the Nation of Islam and in the tradition of Rockwell and so, and even the Renaissance Party.
Why didn't they play like hilariously like over the top, like the production value on that particular episode, if I remember correctly, was really bad. It was just like blasting this like funk soundtrack or something in the background.
No, that was when James Mason went to.
That was when James Mason. Yes. Yeah, okay. I'm mixing them up. Reference. Yeah, that
was amazing. Oh damn!
Yeah.
Gonna have to go back.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'll put it right
shit
here.
Was very funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a black nationalist TV show that had James Mason as a guest. Yeah.
Well, can you tell us who George Lincoln Rockwell was?
He was the man who, in 1959, in Arlington, Virginia, founded the American Nazi Party.
That was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But this is crazy too. Like around him, Metzger has a very unusually colorful cast of characters.
Yeah. So war was against like U.S. military interventions in Central America and claimed that they are advocating self-determination for all of the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they use slogans and like titles in their newspapers such as "Earth First is militant racism" and so on. He thought that the Cold War was a sham and that it was wasting the wealth of the nation. This is his attempt to have some kind of environmental politics. So this is like an illustration about his criticism of the Cold War.
I hear these guys saying, let's nuke the Russians and things like that. The nuclear power is great and all this kind of stuff. And then I started thinking, I said, gee, nuclear war is not good for the white race. And if there is nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the US, it will destroy the entire Northern Hemisphere, which is the ancestral homeland of the Caucasian people. So what the hell am I doing saying, whoopee, let's nuke the Russians? And then when I look at satellite TV and I see the Russians, and I see the majority of the people in European Russia are as white as anybody here, I say, what the hell is this? It was illogical.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, despite what some Nazis later on say about them, you know, starting third positionist politics among the US Nazis and so on, this kind of stuff has a longer tradition. As we mentioned that, you know, the National Renaissance Party had this type of politics before. And Tom Metzger is certainly in this tradition. So I think he even promoted the term third position, already maybe in the 80s. So he was some kind of he wanted to be in both camps in some way. He was an admirer of Hitler, but also wanted to criticize Hitler and say how the Strasser brothers were also right, and that Hitler made a big mistake when he kicked them out of the movement. So, you know, he was, for that reason, he had became unacceptable for the like kind of hardcore Hitlerites amongst the neo-Nazis who thought that, you know, the Führer cannot make mistakes and so on. But also wasn't 100% amongst, you know, the kind of more kind of Strasser people who would say, you know, Hitler was a Jew or something like that. He wanted, you know, a bit of both, I guess.
Wait, is that his third position between Hitler and Strasser?
Yes, in a way, I guess so. So he also thought that it was a big mistake to overturn the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. And in that sense, he criticized, you know, Hitler and the Third Reich.
There are things in National Socialism that I think are preferable to capitalism and communism. But the race issue was sort of mixed up situation over there. A lot of it was German nationalism that was spoken of as racism. Much of the attitude toward the Slavic people and the whole people of Europe and Eastern Europe was very negative. Unfortunately, the war took on a sort of Germanic type of thing where 20 million Russians died, and I would say probably 19 million of them I would consider white. Fratricidal wars, no matter who starts them, could be stopped. So I fault both sides for something like that. And any kind of fratricidal war where white people are killing white people, I'm totally against. World War II is at the heart of the problem today, because before the war, racial separatism was very strong in this country. Eugenic programs were very strong, and all kinds of things that I thought were basically good for the race have now been attached to Nazi Germany and called evil. And people say, we shouldn't do this or that because the Nazis did it. It's very difficult for people in a country like Russia that had 20 million killed to turn around and say, well, we embrace you now. And the Germans also. The many times they have been shafted by England and so forth, and the English being bombed by the Luftwaffe, so it takes a long time to heal. But I believe, and I've been really attacked for this, that if the Nazis would have internalized and kept the revolution going in Germany and not allowed it to expand beyond the borders, the world would be a much better place today. The political left in Germany had a lot of good ideas. They were buffered in between extreme monopoly capitalism and Marxism. Both the Strasser brothers and Hitler had good points, but Hitler tends to move toward the industrialists and make a deal with them. And when that happened, the original idea of National Socialism, I believe, went out the window.
Yeah.
All right. Should have refused all that money.
Yeah. Yes.
And just
interesting quote,
disappeared.
Though. Definitely interesting quote.
Yeah, it is.
So Metzger is an anti-Semite who sees Jews as predatory capitalists, but he also, you know, insists, which is not unusual for, you know, Nazis, especially neo-Nazis, that a lot of white elites are responsible for what's going on, and that even maybe they are even more responsible than the Jews are.
Well, if we recall in the Turner Diaries, the Day of the Rope was specifically for exactly those people.
Yes,
right.
Yes. So, you know, he would say things like, you cannot blame Jews for everything in this country. You can't say the Jews run everything. There are not enough of them. If the Jews have the disproportionate power, it's because your leaders have given it to them. And for that reason, your number one enemy is of your own household.
Okay.
So he thought that the Jews were leading the hyper mercantile global economy, but and he also doubted the official numbers of the Holocaust.
Oh, you don't say.
Yes, but he believed that the racial struggle is basically a civil war within the white race between race traders and white nationalists.
Okay.
And that these race traders are the primary enemy. And he would say something that he would hang 10 or 20 Anglo-Saxons to every Jew.
I mean, the use of the word hang there, I think, was very influential to certain authors on this program.
Yes. So the Order and Bob Matthews were very important for American Nazis in the 80s and for Tom Metzger as well.
And for filmmakers for decades to come.
Yeah. We have an episode on the Order and an episode...
I think.
Two. Well, we have specifically one on the Order, and then we have 2 episodes on the movies based on the Order, right? Or
2 episodes on the 3 movies that we found that were based on the Order, but 2 episodes on the Order, and then 1 episode based on the literature based on the Order.
Okay, so that's like 6 episodes?
Between 2 and 7.
There's a lot of Order.
Okay. Okay, so listen to that. So, you know, Bob Matthews, the Order, they were a terrorist group. Bob Matthews was a member of the National Alliance. Other people in the group were members of other groups like Aryan Nations and other Christian identity groups. They killed radio hosts and robbed a bunch of banks and businesses.
Highly successful bank.
Bombed a porn theater.
Heists.
Gave a bunch of money to Nazis like William Pierce and National Alliance.
Right up.
It was alleged that they gave $250,000 to Tom Metzger and war.
Oh, okay.
This was alleged by Order member Bruce Pierce, but he later claimed that he was pressured by the feds to say that and recanted the statement. But the Southern Poverty Law Center also alleged that the Order gave this money to war, which Metzger denied. But what we know for sure was that Tom Metzger was highly respected by Bob Matthews and the Order, and that David Lane, Order member in 1983, was the head of Metzger's group in Colorado.
Okay.
So other members of the Order also had close connections with Metzger, like Frank Silva, for example. So when Bob Matthews drew up a list of civil administrators that would, take charge of white government after the revolution that he's starting, Metzger, under his code name Bear, was given responsibility for the entire West Coast in this future white world that they will creating. So after the demise of the Order, Metzger quickly started to revive it as a myth in his writings and propaganda that he did, and he always publicly supported them thereafter in the TV shows that he appeared on and so on. So by the late 80s, Metzger became sort of the most visible leader of the racist movement and neo-Nazi movement in the US. So he focused a lot of this idea of racial separatism. So he was in the business of drawing all kinds of maps of, ethno-states and so on. So, for example, one of these maps he drew in 1968 and went to the Aryan Nations Congress with a map, and they had a discussion about it. So I don't know if, did he influence Aryan Nations in these ideas or whatever, but he was discussing these maps at their meetings there. So in this map from 86, he drew this map of the future white homeland, and it consisted out of Washington State, Oregon, Indiana, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, California, and then large parts of Utah, Arizona, and British Columbia, Alberta, and a part of Alaska as well.
Okay,
that's a much bigger white ethno state than some of them. I guess had more
Covington,
modest aims.
I think Covington's was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of people had maps around, but I would guess that Tom Metzger's maps had a bit more weight to them.
Yeah,
most.
I guess so.
He knows how to read and stuff.
So he sought alliances with black nationalists, black separatists, especially with Nation of Islam.
Okay.
So he was contacted by a Nation of Islam leader in 1985, I think, who was an editor of the Nation of Islam newspaper, because Louis Farrakhan was about to go to California to for a tour or something like that. And then they wanted information from Tom Metzger about some Jewish activists who might pose a problem for them in LA or something like that. And Metzger responded and gave them useful information. So this guy, whose name was Abdul Wali Muhammad, invited Metzger and his group to attend the speech by Louis Farrakhan, which they did. And on that occasion, Metzger and White Aryan Resistance donated $100 for Nation of Islam, which was then read out through the speakers to the crowd, which was a big crowd there. $100 from White Aryan Resistance, and there was a big applaud, like people were applauding and cheering for them.
Again, this isn't super unusual, though.
Yes, this already happened with the American Nazi Party. This exact same thing happened.
Yes.
And on that occasion, Malcolm X was present, and he said, "Oh, well, that's the biggest hand you ever got."
That's the biggest audience you're ever going to have.
Yeah,
it was a bit of ribbing.
Yeah. In '93, he gave a speech at a rally of the new Black Panther Party in Milwaukee. Of course, the new Black Panther Party has nothing to do with the original Black Panther Party. It comes out of more kind of Nation of Islam affiliated.
And kind of crazy. Really, I saw them one time.
Oh yeah,
and I went to one of their things in 2004 or something.
Right.
But there was some kerfuffle. Electricity went out, and then they thought it was a deliberate plan.
Sure. The feds got them.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of commotion.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So as I said, he read, Metzger read Bertrand Russell and so on, became an atheist and critic of religion as such, but specifically Christianity, and came to the conclusion this, kind of rationalist atheist kind of think that, people shouldn't believe that there is some kind of magical solution for their problems. It's only us, and white people need to find out, find the solution for their problems. No God will help them, doesn't exist. And race should be our religion, basically, kind of attitude, which, impressed Ben Klassen of the Church of the Creator.
God fucking damn it with these people.
Yes.
Oh,
we'll have an episode on them.
The rest of the episodes, some of our most bummeriest episodes have to do with Ben Klassen's brain.
Yes.
Just there's no way to get through that without coming out fucking sad and confused.
Yeah. So Klassen was impressed by this kind of attitude, the anti-Christian kind of race is our religion attitude by Tom Metzger. And he started courting him in the mid-'80s and wanted Tom Metzger to become his successor and take over the Church of Creator after he's gone.
I just picture him bringing Metzger over to the center. Here it is, Tom, and it's a fucking beaver dam. He strips down and they.
There's a beaver connection to this. Yes. This isn't just Fritz's brain that has been deteriorating.
All this will be yours. You'll have to chuck a bunch of wood.
Yeah. Okay. So Ben Klassen was a guest at Race and Reason. I think, we have clips of that somewhere. This was in December '84, and soon after that, he wrote to Tom Metzger and really kind of tried to push him to start a chapter of the Church of Creator and ran it parallel to war. So, according to this paper, in '86, Klassen really wanted Metzger to take over the church. He was especially impressed by how the Metzger's ability to get on many mainstream shows on television at the time and present his case there. So Tom's son, John Metzger, became an ordained minister of the Church of the Creator when he was aged 16.
Damn, that's young.
Yeah. But Klassen soured on Metzger.
To be clear, though, if you haven't listened to that episode in a while, the theology of becoming of an ordained minister in the World Church of the Creator is not particularly complex. It is your white race is your religion. That's it.
This is the way.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That scared me for a second.
Maybe it's like almost as easy as becoming a deacon in Montenegrin Orthodox Church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe even easier, I think.
Maybe even easier, yeah. So Klassen soured on this idea of Metzger, taking over, because he realized that what Metzger wanted to do is only, absorb his church into war and not really take it over. And Metzger eventually came to the conclusion that the whole religion stuff is not important to him.
Sure.
That he doesn't mind if there are religious and non-religious people in his group, be they Ordinists or like Christian identity, as long as, they agree with the party line, let's say. So Metzger was very kind of media aware of the importance of the media, both in appearing on mainstream media and having his own media. So one of the first media kind of vehicles that he used to promote his stuff was like a tabloid newspaper called War, and subtitled Revolutionary Newspaper of the Working Class Whites. And he modeled it like on yellow journalism, things like New York Post and stuff like that, and launched it in 1983. He said, that he wanted it to consist out of big, gutsy headlines, lots of photos, and short articles. So that ex-Troth Wyatt Kaldenberg became the managing editor of the newspaper.
Well, if there's anything that Trots are good at, it's putting out papers and selling papers.
Exactly, yes. So it had, the author of this paper says, that George Michael says that they had like vulgar racist cartoons that like made Der Stürmer look like, mild in comparison.
Which, again, pretty consistent for American Nazis, is just being as crude and horrible as possible.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, as we mentioned, and we have a whole episode on it, in the 80s, he started his, TV show called Race and Reason. They would record it in a studio owned by the cable company Group W, which was on the campus of California State University at Fullerton. And they would normally produce 2 shows per month. And they encouraged their supporters to contact local cable providers and tell them to air the program on public access channels. At their peak, they were broadcast in 60 cities across the US.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, really.
He was one of the first American Nazis to start using the internet. So in February of 1986, or maybe even 84, I'm not sure now, he introduced something which he called the Aryan Liberty Net. And by 1989, he claimed that this network linked neo-Nazis and skinheads across the nation. In 1990, he started the war fax system, and soon thereafter, they had a website as well.
So, I mean, he really did have his finger on the pulse of communication technology.
He likes it, it's his hobby and calling.
He was not a young guy at this point.
Yeah,
either,
true.
So, I mean, he's... Yeah.
So, in late 80s, early 90s, he started appearing on these kind of mainstream TV shows often with his son. So he went on Geraldo, the Whoopi Goldberg show, Oprah, Morton Downey show. In 88, on the Geraldo show, there was like a big fight, and Wyatt Kaldenberg broke Geraldo's nose.
Yeah, that's the famous, Geraldo got his nose broken.
Yes. So Tom understood, the author of this paper interviewed him, and Tom told him that the way he saw this relationship with the media was a one of mutual exploitation. The media wanted ratings, scandalous things going on, and Tom wanted to get his message out. And it kind of worked. Through this, he attracted a lot of skinheads who, wanted more action, kind of. And Metzger, this is how he portrayed himself, as kind of a militant leader. And so, yes.
I mean, he has the kind of aesthetics. The name is war, very...
Yeah. So, war was rejuvenated through this. They got a lot of younger members who were skinheads in different cities in the US. And Metzger saw them as useful, as being kind of the foot soldiers of the movement that he wanted to create, something like the brown shirts were for the Nazis. And he made them more political, or tried to make them more political and more organized. And in turn, they rejuvenated the group and generally the Nazi movement of the time. So he really went into the whole, skinhead subculture, music, and etc. So in '88, he sponsored the first Aryan Fest with white power bands participating in Oklahoma. And this was in the first of the series of what they called rock and roll concerts.
Oh. Yes, yeah.
One of these he even advertised as Aryan Woodstock.
Yeah.
So I think he even started presenting himself, although he's born in the 30s, as a kind of skinhead, which you can see in the Louis Theroux interview episode with him.
He's wearing a bomber jacket or something, right?
I guess so. Yes.
Yeah.
Shaved his head. It looks different than he did when he had Race and Reason, when he wanted to be like a Nazi William F. Buckley or something like that.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, beginning of 90s was a bad time for Tom Metzger. He had lots of legal troubles. So the SPLC decided they want to sue him, his son, and War as well for a murder that happened in '88, and I think they sued him in 1990. A murder happened in Portland, Oregon. A bunch of Nazi skinheads beaten up some migrants, and one of them was killed, called Mulugeta Serov.
Oh, yeah.
He was an Ethiopian immigrant.
Yeah, this hit the World Church of the Creator, too,
yes,
right?
Yes, yeah.
That was kind of the start of their downfall.
So the skinhead gang that murdered Mulugeta Serov were called Eastside White Power in Portland, Oregon. And for some time they were in connection, they were connected with War through Metzger associate called David Mazzella, and a few other, I think, members of War, like Michael Barker, I think was one of them, and another guy also called Michael Gagnon or something like that. They never personally met Metzger, but through these guys, Metzger tried to communicate with them, and SPLC claimed to recruit them for War and make kind of a serious political outfit out of them. And he sent a letter through them, through these intermediaries, to the gang. So the trial took place in a very charged atmosphere. Just a few weeks before that, there was a bombing of a San Diego federal court by a War supporter. So there was a massive police presence there, and there was a SWAT unit nearby. Metzger's, because his son was a part of the trial, represented themselves, which was a big mistake. They made lots of procedural mistakes. And in the end, judge agreed with the SPLC. And family of the victim was awarded $12.5 million in damages, which War and Metzger were supposed to pay out.
Right. Yeah.
So this, ruined financially Metzger for the rest of his life, and War as well. He had to sell his house and give his house actually away. And he was not even able to ruin it before that. They explained to him, if he destroys the house, they will sue him.
Right.
So, he just had to leave his house. And the other thing was that happened to him was that this not only financially ruined him, it also, although he expected that at least he will become the martyr for the movement, that kind of the opposite happened.
Yeah.
Because the Nazis found out that he actually made kind of a deal with the SPLC and the court, some kind of arrangement, so that he would, about the payments. So the deal was that he would give them 40% of his earnings for the rest of his life. and war's earnings, really. And the Nazis did not like this at all. And the other thing was that the SPLC lawyer had access to all of their mail. And so Ed Fields, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
In 95, he found out about this and wrote about it and how, it's a security issue for the Nazis. You shouldn't write to Tom Metzger and war. This lawyer is reading everything. And anyway, you're giving, if you buy their stuff, you're giving money to SPLC.
Right.
And also Harold Covington was very much on this issue.
Okay.
And all of these people claimed basically, now SPLC is basically a publisher of war propaganda.
Crazy. Okay. Interesting turn for him.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said too about the difference between being literally martyred and just losing your fortune and your financial access, because when you're martyred, that's an instant myth is developed there. You end at your high, but when you're publicly
when you
humiliated and impoverished, you just look
become
weak.
a pay pig for the SPLC. That's not
Yeah. He had other problems as well. In 91, he was sued for a cross burning he did in 83 with Richard Butler and Aryan Nations.
That must have looked so fucking sad.
Yes, without a permit. They did
you get a permit for.
They might have been able to get one. I don't know.
So they were raided by a bunch of cops and so on. And so he got in 92 he got in 91 he got 6 months of jail and 300 hours of some community work. And then he said how he will do it. He wants to do it in a black community and tell them about the Jews, he said to the reporters. But then 2 months after that, his wife died. In the beginning of 92. So it was a really
fucking shitty couple of years for old Metzger there.
Shit.
So not great. So all of this, bad luck, if you want to call it that, made him opt for the lone wolf strategy.
No shit.
I see. You got to work.
Please tell me that one of his kids too was it's the 90s, Dad. Fuck you.
I don't know about this. Yeah.
I'm not a Nazi anymore.
I'm not sure. Look up page 47. Is there a quote there to read?
Page 47, passage 3. Read on.
Here we go. Should I just read it straight up? You want to introduce it?
I don't know what it is, but
the movement will not be stopped in the puny town of Portland. We're too deep. We're embedded now. Don't you understand? We're in your colleges. We're in your armies. We're in your police forces. We're in your technical areas. Where do you think a lot of those skinheads disappeared to? They grew their hair out, went to college. They've got the program. We planted the seeds.
So,
is there
optimistic view?
Very
I think for some of these guys' trajectories. Yeah,
they became engineers.
I think there should be some quote there somewhere. He making some threats against the society and people in it, judges and so on.
His advocacy for revolution became more strident, not tempered. Just hours after the verdict had been announced, Metzger released a recorded message on War's telephone hotline. We will put blood on the streets like you've never seen and advocate more violence than both world wars put together. We have a new set of targets to play with. So if you're white and work for the system, watch your step. Whether you be a system cop, a controlled judge, or a crooked lawyer, your ass is grass.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is him kind of going crazy. After he lost everything, and even Ed Fields is you're working for the SPLC now.
Yes.
So he's he's a lone wolf strategist now.
Okay.
And this is, I think, around the time when he interviewed James Mason and kind of endorsed Siege.
Well, that follows. Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
so he's a loser now, so he makes friends with the losers.
Yeah, Siege was published in the early 90s, right? So that's about that time, maybe a year after this or something like that. And he's I remember watching that interview and Metzger was yeah, this is good stuff,
So he fell pretty hard there.
Yeah, for real. That's a precipitous drop.
down to James Mason.
Yeah. So he was it's futile to try to reach out to the broad masses. Most Americans are brain dead. and like you should refrain from doing like public demos and so on. There's no
exactly what Mason's telling people now. Like, don't do anything
except terrorism.
Oh, except terrorism. No, but James isn't doing that anymore.
Yeah. So the above ground group should support the underground, and the people who are underground should cut their ties with family and friends and totally commit to the cause. So he was kind of on the vanguard of American Nazis because he was started to like praise Islamist terrorists before 9/11, like already in the early 90s. He was into it. He was impressed by the first attack on the World Trade Center, and wrote about it like approvingly. Yeah, so he wanted, individuals doing their own thing, not connected officially to the movement at all, or maybe small groups, or even individuals, without any kind of official contact with the movement. He loved the Oklahoma City bombing.
Sure.
And unlike a lot of Nazis, he didn't think it was a kind of a government conspiracy, but he, was fully supportive of Timothy McVeigh.
War will break with most other race separatist groups on this issue and take the unpopular position at the moment. War will not try to deflect the sword by blaming an Iron Heel, the U.S. government conspiracy to destroy the Iron Heel federal building in Oklahoma. War will not sidestep the Turner Diaries issue, even when its own author tends to sidestep his handiwork. Good burn there.
Yeah. He's good at these burns.
He is, yeah. He's catty as hell. War will not criticize or pick apart the actions of Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh has gone farther than any Aryan thus far in striking back at the beast.
Yeah. So in the 2000s, he changed the name of his tabloid from War to The Insurgent. But soon after, I think it was only like an internet website. He didn't have much legal trouble after that, but
But I mean, how much more legal trouble can you get in other than going to prison?
Sure.
When you're paying for the rest of your life, most of your income to
your enemies.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like close associate and one of the leaders of war, Dennis Mahon, had legal problems in 2009 because of something that he did in 2004, which was he sent a pipe bomb to Don Logan, the diversity director at Scottsdale, Arizona. And he was like the total dumbass because like some weeks before that, he called the diversity department there and made threats and like left messages identifying who he is, leaving his name and so on. So,
strange tactic.
Yes. It's kind of embarrassing for Metzger and his whole lone wolf not having connections with the movement doing stuff thing. Yes. So in 2009, Metzger returned to Indiana, to Warsaw, the town that he was born in, and lived in the house of his mother who died. In 2010, although he's not like a lone wolf strategist, he actually tried running for office again for Congress, and like this was the Tea Party era. He thought that this might be good for him, but he got like 10 votes or something like that. And on his website before he died, he posted Dylan Roof's manifesto and said that how he completely agrees with everything there and so on. But in 2018, he actually moved back to California. I think he was already almost 80 or in his 80s. He had Parkinson's disease. Probably moved back to his, I don't know.
The weather's better than Indiana. Warsaw, Indiana.
I think his children were there and were able to take care of him because he was sick. And he died in 2020.
Oh, okay.
I think he was like 83 or something like that.
There's your obituary.
Yes. Okay.
Damn. Okay. So,
I mean, that's a good run through of Metzger's life. He is definitely one of the more interesting guys of this era because he was kind of ahead of the game in a lot of stuff. At the same time, his fall from grace is in Nazi circles is pretty epic. I mean, it's pretty spectacular that he eventually ends up blackpailing himself into like siege
Yeah, but I think it is interesting that at the very end he's doing this Dylan Roof thing and kind of appealing to that brief Bullwaffen thing going on. That shows like he's still kind of plugged in.
Oh no, for sure, yeah.
I mean, it's tough. Like you're a Nazi for like many decades. You dedicate your life. Then in the end, you lose everything. Because of the Jews or whatever. And then you think, oh well, at least I'll be the hero for my people. And it's like. Ed Fields is like, no, you're a Jew now. So it's like, I mean, what else is left in Siege? And James Mason.
Oh wow, that's quite a fall.
It's a pretty spectacularly sad.
The thing is, and I mean, this should come as no surprise, but just imagine if you had just been a television repair guy. He would have been in a much better position. He would have had probably some retirement money. He wouldn't be owing somebody
or not quit his job at Douglas because of being unionized.
Yes, exactly.
For example,
I have the feeling that it might have been also other things going on there.
But
maybe.
This one is also he goes on to be like the workers' Nazi, but he leaves because of the union. I mean, jackass.
Yeah, I mean. Probably there was something else as well, but I mean, he was definitely like a functional,
but I think that there's we know that there's a very kind of prestigious position of aerospace people in general in like the American Nazi movement.
Absolutely.
Between William Luther Pierce, Ben Klassen, too.
Richard Butler was.
Richard Butler.
They were all engineering.
George Deathridge.
Richard Butler was working Lockheed, right?
Yeah. Alongside supposedly Steve Saylor's dad.
And Ben Klassen too was in aerospace.
Yeah,
too. So I mean, it's an interesting connection there, and I'm willing to bet that he understood that and wanted to kind of play up his this job that he had for 5 years and may or may not have left because of unions.
So somehow under-socialized white guys that really love systems that work perfectly are somehow attracted, you're saying, to fascist mentalities.
Yeah, but at first, he liked the radio and so on. He could be like not a Nazi, I guess.
No, he could have been just a regular
amateur radio circles are very cool people.
Yes.
They go to weird, hard to get to places to set up their little transmission stations, and they're like the only motherfuckers that like get permits to go out to like minor the minor outlying islands, and they go like once every 20 years to like Howland Island in the Pacific.
That's a fucking life of adventure there.
Yeah, I mean that's
the military.
What the fuck
that's
you
awesome.
Need to be a Nazi for. Just be a radio dude. Amateur radio guy, fix TVs.
I mean, I know this is a hot take we're offering here, but we're going to go out and say, I think, with some confidence, better to be a radio nerd than a Nazi.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And no one's making you be both.
Yeah.
But it is interesting in the places that he was ahead of the game. I think ideologically, especially for those times that he also kind of was part of everything, but then, dropped Christian identity, dropped all that kind of weird religious cult Nazi stuff.
He did a full tour, and there's not a whole lot of people that have that.
And that whole like class based politics is pretty effective.
But it also seemed like he was doing a bit of like, I don't want to say maybe self-sabotage, but like if he wanted to be a de-Nazi leader, it seems like he had more opportunities that he didn't take.
Sure.
Like he was like a reverend in Christian identity, and Ben Klassen wanted to give him his organization.
I mean,
and he kind of,
he was admired by Bobby.
Yes.
Yeah, but what was he really going to get from Ben Klassen's organization? I mean,
no. Yeah.
Even at its height, it wasn't particularly impressive.
Boris.
And he already had list. I mean, he already had the skinheads that went into the World Trade Creator stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like he knew when to leave a loser when he saw it. Like when that whole story about David Duke and the weightlifting, that really that shows us. Or even with leaving Liberty Lobby, because he's like this Carto guy. He's like he's only going to take me so far. Like he knew. I think he jumped ship at the right times for the most part, except for the big ship. The Titanic, which was being a Nazi.
Yeah. and being like, outwardly, yes, I am the most, support all this shit. Like, he didn't like people that were two-faced about it, like Cardo
right.
Even David Duke to some extent, right? Being a coward, running away, all this kind of stuff. And, that landed him in a court case that destroyed his life.
Yeah. And like many of the people that we covered, he started in the John Birch Society.
Yeah. No, it's the exact same trajectory for even, very similar even to Bob Matthews, right?
Yeah. Ben Klassen as well was, right?
It's all like, Goldwater, then
right.
I joined the Birch Society. Some of them, like, with Bob Matthews, militia.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, but he spent 8 years, as like an organizer in John Birch Society, which is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. I'd be interested to see, I wonder if he was writing for them at the time.
Probably.
I mean, there's probably some sort of archive of that. People that collect Bircher material would know. But it'd be interesting to read, to kind of compare his John Birch Society era stuff to his later material.
Let's be fair though. He didn't necessarily start in JBS. He started in Sell America. Committee.
Yeah.
Which I want to find out more about, honestly.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, he, like, corporate elites introduced him to fascism, basically, or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. All right. So, Metzger, we got you.
And is that it for Metzger, or are we coming back to war?
I'm not planning anything now, but like there more material there if you want to go into the whole trial that happened and the connection with the skinheads and so on, but not now.
Yeah.
Might be worth rewatching the Louis Theroux documentary.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Metzger is that there's such a huge amount of his, media content, both from self-produced, like Race and Reason, to like, all the other, Oprah and
exactly.
Whoopi
Goldberg.
Damn.
But I mean, it's, like we mentioned in one of the last episodes, like this whole story, how much it's so American, it's not like, as you made that point, Boris, last time about the liberal journalists saying, how today they're mixing up European nationalism and whatever, in America. And it's like these Nazis have like they're rooted in American stuff. Even like the quote that you read when he says how now everyone, like, this Hitler kind of didn't do us a favor because we had our own thing going on with the eugenicist movement and so on.
Yeah, they ruined racism in
America. So, and he's aware of that,
Yeah, it was a very telling quote, yeah.
All right. Well, once again, no morals to the story, just more horrible shit.
Yeah. A surprisingly functional American
Nazi. Could that be the subtitle?
Actually, I wonder yes. Do we know what happened to his kids?
I don't know.
Look into that.
Okay. So a farewell to our surprisingly functional Nazi.
Yeah.
Metzger. And to you, listener. And if those of you who are lucky enough to be on our Patreon are going to get another dose of Keith soon.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully very soon.
Yes.
And that'll be great. Plus some more old fan favorites returning to the podcast as well.
Oh, yeah?
So all you free listeners, stop being that.
Yeah.
Come on over.
Yeah.
Let's do this. War. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe?
We didn't originate on this planet.